I want you to, well, just imagine your kitchen spice rack for a second.
Oh, I'm sure it's a mess. Mine always is.
Right, exactly. Picture that clutter. You've got your oregano, your cinnamon, your nutmeg, and nestled right there in the back, probably in some little glass jar you only reach for around the holidays, is this tiny, dried flower bud.
The one that looks like a little rusted wooden nail.
Yeah. It is so commonplace, so, thoroughly ordinary, that you probably never give it a second thought when you toss it into a pot of mulled wine.
Most people don't.
But that tiny bud shaped the entire global economy. I mean, it inspired legendary myths of genies and immortals, and it holds a botanical chemical so wildly potent that modern scientists are literally studying it right now to fight cancer.
And to numb aquarium fish, which is a wild detail we will definitely get to.
Yes, we will.
But seriously, it is genuinely one of the most consequential plants in human history, just hiding right there in plain sight on your kitchen counter.
So today we are taking a massive stack of sources ranging from historical encyclopedias detailing ancient trade routes all the way to cutting-edge biomedical research papers on molecular pathways.
It's a big stack.
It is. And our mission is to extract the globe-spanning story of the clove for this deep dive.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we can even begin to talk about what the clove does inside the human body, we have to understand where it came from.
Your geography is key.
Right, the sheer geographical isolation of this plant is, well, it's the entire reason humanity became so obsessed with it.
Yeah, because for thousands of years, the clove tree, which is known botanically as Syzygium aromaticum, originally grew in exactly one place on Earth.
And we aren't talking about a continent here.
No, not even a large landmass. We are talking about 5 tiny, specific volcanic islands.
Right in the Maluku region of eastern Indonesia. Exactly. Ternate, Matir, Tidore, Makian, and Bacan. If you wanted cloves anywhere in the world, they had to be harvested from those 5 tiny docks of land in the middle of a massive ocean.
Which is just crazy to think about. And that geographic bottleneck naturally spawned incredible mythology, right? Arabian and Indian sailors were trading these spices for centuries without ever actually knowing where the supply originated.
They had no idea.
None. I was reading this account from the year 1000 by an Arabic writer named Ibrahim ibn Wasif Shah. He documented a completely fabricated origin point called the Valley of Cloves.
Oh, the genie story.
Yes. He claimed that no merchant had ever actually seen the trees because the cloves were harvested and sold entirely by genies.
And the logistics he described for this were effectively a ghost trade.
Wait, how did that work?
So sailors would supposedly leave their merchandise on the beach, retreat to their ships overnight, and then by dawn, their items would be magically replaced by piles of cloves.
Yeah, like a spooky vending machine. And according to Ibn Wasif Shah, if a merchant tried to spy on the exchange, they'd see that the locals were actually these yellow, beardless immortals who dressed in leaves.
And never aged.
Right, because their entire diet consisted of cloves. It is just a brilliant piece of ancient world building. To me, it mirrors how a modern tech company might fiercely guard its algorithm,
Oh, absolutely. Or how a diamond cartel obscures its supply chain.
Exactly. You create this impenetrable wall of secrecy to maintain a monopoly and drive up the perceived value.
But the reality behind that manufactured scarcity was actually a triumph of indigenous logistics. The true secret keepers were the local Bandanese people.
They were the ones who actually controlled the inter-island trade.
They completely locked it down.
Yep.
They navigated those waters in these remarkable vessels called korakora canoes.
I saw pictures of those in the sources. They had these huge outriggers, right?
Yeah, they were propelled by rowers sitting on bamboo platforms, lashed like 5 feet out on either side of the main hull. The Bandanese acted as the sole middlemen. They traded sago palm, which was their staple food for spices, from those 5 specific volcanic islands.
So they basically created a closed loop.
Precisely. By doing that, they successfully isolated the true source of the cloves from the Indian and Arabian ships that were just waiting at the major trade emporiums further west.
And because of that intense secrecy, the clove transcended being just a mere flavoring. I mean, it became the ultimate global status symbol. Like in China, during the 3rd century BCE, under the Han Dynasty, cloves were known as haishoheng.
Which translates to bird's tongue, right?
Yeah, bird's tongue. If you were a court officer, you were legally required to hold these birds' tongues in your mouth to sweeten your breath before speaking to the sovereign.
They were the ancient world's most expensive breath mints.
Literally. And then moving westward, the displays of wealth became even more staggering.
Oh, the Romans went all out. Historical records detail Constantine, the great gifting Saint Sylvester, who was the Bishop of Rome, 150 pounds of cloves.
150 pounds.
And they were presented in solid gold and silver vessels. I mean, in the context of the Roman Empire, that wasn't just a gift of pantry staples.
No, that's a transfer of immense concentrated wealth.
Exactly. But that Roman tradition of treating cloves as hard currency shifted as we moved into the Middle Ages. The obsession mutated from purely a display of wealth into a matter of life and death.
Which is fascinating because there is this pervasive pop culture trope that medieval food was just, bland, boiled, rotting meat, and people only use spices to cover up the stench of decay.
Right, we see that in movies all the time.
Yeah.
But the historical sources thoroughly dismantle that narrative.
Yeah, historian Paul Friedman's research is super illuminating on this front. He analyzed surviving medieval culinary texts and found that approximately 75% of their recipes involved spices.
75%, that's huge. And the consumption rates at high-status events were just staggering. At the 1476 wedding of the Duke of Bavaria, the banquet required 85 pounds of nutmeg and vast, almost ungodly quantities of cloves.
But looking at those massive quantities, it begs the question of motivation. Were they heavily spicing their food simply because it tasted good, or did they genuinely believe they were eating medicine?
Well, to the medieval mind, there was absolutely no distinction between a meal and a medical treatment.
They were the same thing.
The overlap was absolute. This medical framework was largely inherited from Islamic scholars, like the 9th century physician Isaac ibn Amran. He translated and expanded upon ancient Greek medical texts, and they operated on the humoral theory of medicine.
Oh, right, the framework where human health relies on balancing 4 bodily humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile.
You got it. And cloves were formally classified in these medical texts as hot and dry in the 3rd degree.
So, if a medieval patient presented with a quote-unquote cold or wet illness, maybe like a winter respiratory infection or severe digestive sluggishness, a heavily spiced, clove-rich meal wasn't just a culinary preference.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It was a literal, doctor-prescribed intervention to restore the body's internal temperature and moisture balance. They were literally eating their medication.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Modern science has actually vindicated their obsession. We've taken this tiny flower bud, put it under a mass spectrometer, and isolated the active molecule driving all these effects.
Right, the magic ingredient.
Yeah, it's a compound called eugenol.
What's fascinating here is the sheer concentration of eugenol within the plant.
Yeah.
When you extract the volatile oil from a dried clove bud, eugenol makes up a massive 80 to 90% of that oil's chemical profile.
That is absurdly high for a single compound in a plant.
It really is. It is the undisputed structural core of the clove's power.
And we see that power most clearly in dentistry, right? If you have ever had a dry socket or severe dental pain, and the dentist packs it with that incredibly strong-smelling medicinal paste, you've intimately experienced eugenol at work.
Yeah, that smell is unmistakable.
It doesn't just sit on the surface of the gum, though. It penetrates the dental pulp, enters the localized bloodstream, and shuts off the pain.
It acts as a localized anesthetic by physically blocking the voltage-gated calcium and chloride channels in your ganglion cells.
Which means what, exactly?
It basically stops the pain signal from passing through the cellular gate.
So it's essentially changing the locks on the nerve endings. The pain message is still being sent by the damaged tissue, but it simply can't get in the door.
That is a perfect way to put it. And furthermore, the biomedical papers show eugenol is a phenomenally powerful antioxidant. It actually outperforms synthetic commercial food preservatives like BHT.
But to understand why that matters, we have to define what an antioxidant is actually fighting, right?
Exactly. It combats free radicals, which are unstable molecules missing an electron. Because they are unstable, they aggressively steal missing electrons from your healthy cells,
causing oxidative damage. It functions almost like microscopic rust eating away at your healthy cellular structure.
Yes. The rust analogy is spot on. And eugenol is structurally engineered to stop that rust. It readily donates one of its own hydrogen atoms to that unstable free radical.
So it just hands over the missing piece.
Right. It gives the free radical the electron it wants, neutralizing it instantly and stopping the chain reaction of oxidative damage. And crucially, the eugenol molecule itself remains completely stable even after donating the atom.
Wait, how does it not become unstable itself?
Thanks to the inherent stability of its aromatic carbon ring, it is incredibly elegant chemistry.
So if eugenol can stop cellular damage at a structural level and literally turn off a nerve ending by blocking calcium channels, it stands to reason it has profound effects when it circulates deeper into the human body.
Oh, absolutely. The clinical research on systemic health is extensive, particularly regarding the cardiovascular system.
Yeah, it acts as an incredibly effective platelet inhibitor. Clinical studies show it prevents blood clots more effectively than collagen,
Alongside that, it functions as a reversible vasodilator.
meaning it helps open up the blood vessels.
Exactly. It improves blood flow and reduces pressure, but in a way that doesn't permanently alter the structural integrity of the vessel walls.
And that systemic protection extends to the brain and the liver as well. We reviewed this fascinating study involving mice that were dosed with scopolamine.
Oh, the memory deficit study?
Yeah, scopolamine is a compound that induces severe oxidative stress in the brain, essentially wiping out short-term learning and memory pathways. But when those compromised mice were treated with eugenol, it actually reversed the learning and memory deficits.
It actively shielded the neurological pathways.
Incredible. And it performs a similar protective function for the liver. When researchers introduced carbon tetrachloride, which is this notoriously harsh industrial solvent used in trials to induce severe toxic liver damage, eugenol acted as a hepatoprotective agent.
It basically shielded the liver cells from being destroyed by the toxicity.
Right. It is consistently mitigating oxidative stress across multiple organ systems. But the most compelling research we've seen has to be the oncology studies.
The cancer studies are striking. Research demonstrates that eugenol induces apoptosis in human leukemia, breast cancer, and colorectal cancer cells.
And just to clarify, apoptosis is simply programmed cell suicide, right?
Correct. It is the biological self-destruct button that a healthy body triggers when a cell goes rogue or becomes damaged.
But cancer cells are incredibly devious because they figure out how to disable their own self-destruct mechanism so they can multiply unchecked.
Yeah, they aggressively downregulate their apoptotic pathways. They essentially refuse the biological command to die.
But eugenol, and this is the crazy part, it sneaks into these rogue cancer cells and specifically inhibits the NF-kappa B pathway, which is the exact survival pathway the tumor relies on.
It forces the self-destruct button to activate, killing the tumor cell while completely ignoring the healthy normal cells surrounding it.
It's like a targeted missile. And connecting this to the broader historical picture, it is profound to realize that modern molecular biology is basically providing the specific mechanisms for ancient Ayurvedic medicine.
It really brings it full circle.
Mm.
Thousands of years ago, Indian practitioners prescribed clove extracts to treat stomach issues, alleviate liver complaints, and promote general longevity.
And they obviously didn't have the technology to map NF-kappa B pathways or observe free radical scavenging.
No, but they observed the systemic biological results. They identified the biological hack through observation. Modern science is just finally deciphering the underlying code.
But that biological hack isn't restricted to human diseases. A molecule this potent interacts with entirely different receptor systems across mammalian biology and the broader natural world.
Oh, for sure. For instance, in modern agriculture, researchers are using eugenol to protect crops like strawberries and navel oranges from rotting.
How does it do that?
It is highly effective because it physically disrupts the cell membranes of the agricultural fungi trying to consume the fruit. It provides a potent fungicide without the need for synthetic chemical sprays.
And it is equally aggressive as a pest control agent. It acts as a highly effective repellent against mosquitoes.
Specifically, the species known to carry dengue fever.
Yes, exactly. As well as chiggers, red imported fire ants, and wasps. And then we get into the aquaculture applications, which are just bizarre.
Yes, the use of clove oil in aquatic veterinary medicine.
They literally use it as an anesthetic for aquarium fish.
It's true. Studies show that a specific concentration of clove oil safely anesthetizes Danio, commonly known as zebrafish, allowing handlers to transport or examine them.
But the literature is very clear that prolonged exposure to the oil is entirely lethal to the fish.
Which is a very thin line to walk.
Right. And highlighting just how broadly this molecule impacts different biological systems, a study on male rats utilizing a 50% ethanolic extract of clove demonstrated a significant sustained increase in mating behavior.
Yeah, it is a scientifically documented aphrodisiac for rodents.
Okay, looking at that cross-species potency, a logical red flag goes up for me. If this essential oil is a powerful enough solvent to melt fungal cell walls, toxic enough to kill fire ants, and potent enough to shut down the nervous system of a fish, how is it remotely safe for the human body to process when we eat a heavily spiced meal?
This raises an important question, and it directly challenges the very common, dangerous fallacy that natural inherently means harmless.
Which it definitely doesn't.
It doesn't. Cyanide is a natural plant byproduct. The defining principle here, as with all pharmacology, is that the dose makes the poison.
The golden rule of toxicology.
Exactly. The FDA does generally recognize clove and eugenol as safe for human consumption as a food additive. However, the World Health Organization has established a very strict acceptable daily intake limit.
What's the cap on that?
They cap it at 2.5 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. You do not want to cross that threshold.
So what exactly happens biologically when we ingest a normal, safe dose? Why doesn't it just shut down our nervous system like the zebrafish?
Well, it comes down to the efficiency of our mammalian metabolic pathways. When you swallow eugenol, it absorbs into your bloodstream rapidly. It has a half-life of roughly 14 to 18 hours.
Okay.
Within that specific window, your liver identifies the compound and metabolizes it primarily by binding the eugenol molecules to glucuronic acid or sulfate to render them water-soluble.
So the liver is essentially acting as a chemical packaging plant, wrapping the eugenol in this acid so it can be safely flushed out through the urine.
That is an excellent way to visualize it. The human body is highly adapted to clearing it out quickly at normal dietary doses, but at a severe acute overdose, that liver packaging plant gets overwhelmed.
The conveyor belt backs up.
The metabolic pathway backs up, yes, and the side effects are severe. The clinical literature documents cases of generalized seizures resulting from clove oil overdoses.
Wow, seizures.
Yeah. It also causes severe hepatotoxicity, meaning the exact chemical that is supposed to protect the liver ends up poisoning it when the dose is too high.
That's a cruel irony.
It is. And even in localized dental applications with normal doses, some patients develop severe allergic contact dermatitis from the volatile oil. It is a powerful chemical tool, and it demands respect.
So what does this all mean? We started this deep dive by asking you to look at your kitchen spice rack. And what we found is that a tiny dried bud harvested from 5 remote volcanic islands in Indonesia managed to sweeten the breath of Han Dynasty emperors.
It artificially inflated the medieval global economy through a ghost trade of sheer secrecy and myth.
Exactly. And today it provides modern medicine with a deeply potent, cancer-fighting, memory-saving molecule that simultaneously holds the power to numb a human tooth and, well, knock out an aquarium fish.
It is the ultimate testament to the hidden complexity of the natural world. It just shows how much pharmacology is waiting to be discovered in the plants around us.
It really is. And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We look at the clove today with our mass spectrometers and our DNA microarrays, and we can map the exact hydrogen transfer that stops a free radical.
Oh, the specific pathway it uses to trigger apoptosis in a leukemia cell.
Exactly. But ancient cultures figured out that this stuff was powerful medicine through pure, unadulterated trial and error. They just observed the human body's reactions over millennia. So, if they could identify the staggering medical power of the clove thousands of years ago, what other weeds or completely ordinary plants are growing out by your sidewalk right now, totally ignored, that are just hiding the next massive medical breakthrough?
They're just sitting there waiting for someone to put them under a microscope.
The next time you open your spice cabinet, just remember you might be looking at the future of medicine.